So, if you're an apprentice project manager, you've definitely come across K24, procurement. And yeah, it might seem like just another box you have to take for your EPA, but what if I told you it's actually one of the most powerful skills you can have? Seriously, this is what separates the good project managers from the truly great ones. Let's dive in. To help us figure this out, let's meet Jody. She's an APM apprentice at a company called IBA Stores, and what she's saying here, it probably sounds pretty familiar, right? That feeling of, okay, I have to prove I know this, but where do I even start? It's a super common feeling. So we're gonna follow Jody's journey from being totally confused to completely confident. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll be right there with her. All right, so Jody does the smart thing. She goes straight to her mentor, Adam. She knows she can't even think about building evidence for her portfolio until she actually gets what this is all about. So Adam takes her right back to the very beginning to break down what procurement really means. Adam kicks things off with a really simple question. He gets that a word like procurement can sound kind of formal, a little corporate, and intimidating. But the truth is, it's something we all kind of do in our everyday lives. We just don't call it that. So Adam uses this brilliant, simple analogy, planning a big party. Think about it. You need to hire a DJ and a caterer, right? Well, that's procurement. Now, let's say you choose them based on who's best for the job, not just because one of them is your friend. That's ethical procurement. And if you pick the caterer who uses local, sustainable ingredients and avoids single-use plastics, that's sustainable procurement. See, it's not so complicated after all. And this is just perfect because it lays it all out side by side. Sourcing goods and services sounds complex, but it's really just finding a DJ and a caterer. Selecting suppliers, that's just choosing the best one for your party. And managing performance? Well, you gotta make sure they actually show up and do a great job. It just completely demystifies the whole process. Okay, so now Jody gets the what, but that's only half the battle. Now she needs to understand the why. So she goes to talk with her line manager, Riddle, to find out why these ethical and sustainable principles aren't just, nice things to do, but are actually at the very core of how a business like IBA Stores works. Riddle basically lays out two different paths you can take. On one side, you've got the path of just chasing short-term savings. And yeah, it might look good on paper at first, but it often leads to huge long-term problems, like environmental damage or a really bad reputation. But the other path, the IBA Stores way, is all about focusing on long-term value. It's about thinking through the environmental impact and treating your suppliers fairly. That's the path that actually protects the company and lines up with its values. So what do we actually mean when we say ethical? Well, Riddle breaks it down into these four key ideas. First, fair competition, giving all your potential suppliers a fair shot. Then there's transparency in how you make your decisions. Next up is integrity, avoiding any conflicts of interest. And finally, compliance, which just means you're following the company's rules and the law. And sustainable isn't just about being green either. It really stands on three pillars. You have environmental responsibility, which is all about reducing waste and our footprint. Then there's social responsibility, making sure we respect human rights all along the supply chain. And finally, there's economic sustainability, which is a big one. It means choosing the best long-term value, not just the absolute cheapest option right now. Okay, Jody's got the theory down pat. She gets the what and the why. Now it's time to put it all into practice. So she heads back to her mentor, Adam, to figure out how to actually apply all these principles to a real project at IBA Stores. This is where it all starts to click. Adam walks her through the typical stages you'd find in any procurement process, but he uses her recent project as the perfect example, sourcing new in-store displays. So first, they identified the need for new displays. Then they defined the requirements, and this is key, they included that the displays had to be made from recycled materials. After that, they selected a supplier based on clear ethical criteria. Now they're in the process of managing that supplier's performance, and later on they'll review the final outcomes. And here it is, the most crucial point of all. Great procurement is never about just one thing. It's always a balancing act. You're constantly weighing cost against quality, risk against reward, and you're doing all of that while keeping your company's core values in mind. Getting good at that balancing act, that's the real art of being a great project manager. Which brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle. It's the one part that often causes the most stress for apprentices. How do you actually prove you've done all this? So Jody sets up a meeting with her coach, Olivia, to figure out how to build solid evidence for her portfolio in AppDem. And Jody just comes right out and asks the million-dollar question. Because it's one thing to know all this stuff, right? But it's a completely different challenge to evidence it in a way that's going to satisfy an assessor. How do you take these experiences and this understanding and turn it into something tangible for your portfolio? Olivia makes it super clear. She says, you don't need to go write a whole legal contract. What the assessors really want to see is your thinking process. So you can write a reflection explaining why choosing that sustainable material for the display project was so important. Or you can give some anonymized examples of the discussions you had when you were selecting a supplier. You could even write a summary showing that you were thinking about the potential risks. And Olivia gives Jody this brilliant, super simple framework for writing a really powerful reflection. It's a 3-step structure. First, describe the situation. What was the need? Second, explain the factors. What ethical or sustainable issues did you think about? And third, detail the impact. How did your choice actually affect the project and line up with the company's values? It's the perfect formula. Okay, just to build up that last little bit of confidence, Olivia decides to prep Jody for her endpoint assessment, her EPA. She walks her through a really common question, which is great because it takes all the fear of the unknown right out of the equation. So here's a classic EPA question. Imagine you're in the hot seat and they ask you this. An assessor isn't looking for you to just recite a textbook definition. They want to see that you can connect the dots between the choices you make in procurement and what actually happens in the real world on a project. Now look at this model answer. It's just fantastic. It's clear, it's confident, and it covers all the bases. Notice how it shows that procurement isn't just some administrative task, it's strategic. It directly hits the big project constraints, cost, time, and quality. But then it goes even further, linking it to bigger picture things like risk, the company's reputation, and its values. That kind of big picture thinking is exactly what will impress an assessor. And just like that, Jody's journey is complete. I mean, she went from feeling completely lost and overwhelmed to feeling confident and totally capable. By breaking this whole topic down into the what, the why, the how, and how to prove it, she's ready. And not just to pass her EPA, but to be a better, more thoughtful, and more responsible project manager. So we want to leave you with this final question. Think about a project you are working on right now. What is just one procurement decision, it could be big, it could be small, where you could apply an ethical or sustainable lens? Really thinking that through and coming up with an answer, that's your first real step to mastering K24. Thanks so much for joining us.